Since 2017, 150,000 farms have shut down. Working farmland has been reduced by 21 million acres. The system has been crippling the remaining farmers, forcing some to adopt nefarious farming techniques, like pumping hormones and other performance-enhancing drugs into their cows so they can survive in crammed feedlots. Or the farmers are forced to jump ship and sell to land-hoarding, profit-chasing agricultural oligarchies, who use their billions of dollars to crush the competition and increase your family's dependence on their manufactured food. What could possibly go wrong? The family farm will soon be a thing of the past, unless you do something. You can. That's why there's From the Farm, an industry-disrupting platform that connects consumers directly with local farmers, which means you can buy fresh, non-factory farm food, and you'll know exactly where your food came from and how it was raised. For the first time in nearly 100 years, independent farms will have a way to not only survive, but thrive. From the Farm was founded by A.J. Richards, an active homesteader, and Brooke Entz, a CrossFit Games athlete and an Amazonian warrior in the movies Wonder Woman and Justice League. She clearly has a passion for healthy food and a healthy lifestyle. And since both A.J. and Brooke come from generations of ranchers and farmers, they know what they're talking about. We can't do this alone. We need the strength of the American people behind us. Help us build a new food system that combines the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future. Investing in From the Farm isn't just a financial decision. It's an investment into our future, our small family farms, and our food sovereignty. Invest today.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here from the Farm Live. Today's guest is Curtis Evelo from E6 Ranch in Montana. I'm excited to bring him on and introduce y'all, get to know him and what he's up to. There's a lot going on in the nation right now with tariffs, lots to discuss. We might get into some of this with Curtis regarding tariffs and how that's going to affect our producers and all of the things that are involved with the food there. Now, these are just perspectives of ours from where we sit in the ag supply chain. Agriculture is a very complex machine. There are people that are independent producers. In other words, they just grow for themselves and then they either sell into auction or they sell direct to consumer, or maybe they have their own retail outlets. Independent producers essentially are not growing for other contracts. Then you've got producers that will grow primarily and just focus on the beef supply chain as it exists, where the big packers primarily control it. So their cow-calf, they take their calves to auction. That goes into the main supply chain. And then you've got the big corporations and the big packers. Most, if I don't know really many of them that have their own herds, but they contract people all over the globe. And so if you're into production or commodity agriculture, which admittedly, I don't know much about. My life and my experiences were growing up around the independent producers. So I have met more of those folks and learned more from their perspectives than the commodity side. But I am looking to learn more about the commodity side as well. But from my view, it looks like the tariffs are going to make a much bigger negative impact on the commodity side than the local producers. And we can talk a little bit about that. Anyway, lots going on. Really excited about the growth and success of From the Farm. So far, we've got 66 producers, as you see here, dotted across the nation. If you go to fromthefarm.org, we're growing this map, this network of farms and ranches and homesteads across the nation, because the future of agriculture in America should be families on smaller acres throughout the nation growing food for their neighbors. Smaller quantities for local neighbors, not corporate farms automated to do this on mass scales. There's a lot of detail around that and why that's my opinion, but we're trying to build a food system that allows us to make the connection between you, the consumer, and the people growing food much simpler. As we grow this map over time, you can see there it's starting to spread out. I imagine a day 10 years from now when there's farmers and ranchers in every county across the nation, that will shorten the food supply chain distance that it has to travel. That will shorten all of the inputs. One of the biggest middlemen right now for producers that are going direct to consumer, and why it's not necessarily, it's skewed that it should be cheaper to buy direct. One of those issues is the shipping. Shipping is the new middleman, and the cost to ship from one state to another. So as we dot this map with local producers nationwide, those costs come down, which will then in turn go to the consumer. So a diversified, massive network of millions of small farms and ranches across the nation is what we need, and frankly, what I think nature and God intended. So, with that, I'm going to bring Curtis on. Curtis is becoming a great friend and learning a lot about his operation. We're going to learn more. And so, with that, Curtis, welcome to From the Farm Live. Good to have you, brother.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah. So, Curtis, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you guys are located, a little bit about your family.
Well, we're essentially a first generation ranch that it skipped a generation. So, but I started out on my own doing this. But we live here in Montana, Ronan, Montana, and I got my wife and my 4 older children, and then we have 4 adopted children, and then we're fostering a couple more right now. And so that's really what we've been doing. We've done cattle for since 2009, and but agriculture and cattle and everything has been in my heart ever since I was a little kid. My grandpa had a farm. Both my grandpas had a farm. Actually, one on the west end of Aberdeen, South Dakota, and the other one on the east end of Aberdeen, South Dakota. And so when we go, that's where we were at. It's go vacation, go to grandpa's farms,
Nice.
grandpa's, both of them. And so
Yeah,
yeah, it was good. It was good.
that's awesome. I'm curious because I had a conversation with my daughters earlier today. How old were your grandparents when your grandfathers when they passed?
My grandpa was both of them actually were in their 80s.
Yeah, that
Um,
was the conversation I was having. I'm 42.
yep,
And so, God willing, I'm only halfway. And so I'm
yep,
thinking about all the
yep,
things that I can accomplish in the last
yep,
half of my life with the wisdom I've gotten to this point. But the
yep,
observation is the old timers I know that lived into their 80s and 90s and were functioning, they all had one common thing. Every one of them that I know personally. Now, this is, somebody could say a counter to their experience, but all of those in my life were farmers.
yep,
They were doing something from the start to finish, and
yep,
then they went out only when their body just could not keep up.
yep, yep,
And it was a lot more physical because they all would say the same thing. The hardest part is that I feel in my mind I'm in my 30s, but my
100%.
my body won't do it.
Yep,
So yeah,
yep,
I was curious if that was
yep.
true in your space as well.
Yeah, yeah. My one grandpa, my namesake, Grandpa Evelo, um, he was actually out working on a farm tractor when he was 80 something, and then got sick and couldn't complete the tractor and died
Hmm.
6 months later or so.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah, my grandpa died at 96. Step grandfather died at 96, and um, was bucked off at 93.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
you're 90. Yeah, you're 93, and that's why he died at 96, because 93 you get bucked off, you're not
Yep.
recovering.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
if I remember correctly, it was like a 3-year downhill from there because he couldn't
Yeah.
do it anymore, and
Yeah.
that's what kept him alive.
Yeah. Ripped his
So
heart out. Ripped his life away. Yeah,
yeah,
I can totally get it. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So I think I was listening to a podcast. I think his name's Bob Kinford. I could be wrong with that, but he was saying, the guy asked him, when you going to retire, and he goes, well, when I can't get on my horse, I guess.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
he said, actually, it's harder getting off the horse than it is getting on. So,
Can understand that. Yeah.
but so you
Totally.
guys are up in Montana.
Yep.
You're running a herd and a flock with the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so,
it's a perfect opportunity for, especially the foster kids and the adopted kids and stuff that these kids have never, they have an opportunity right now to be able to see life,
mm,
see the life cycle, see how things go. And if that's one thing I've ever, really kind of focused on or really made a point to that the kids understand that, you know, life is a cycle and these kids get to see it, from when the baby chicks are born and they grow to be chickens and then as time goes on we harvest them, it's
yep.
and Same with the cows. It's a steer's job is to feed us. A
Yeah.
heifer. A heifer's job is to go to breed. Go back to breed. And a bull's job, if a bull it remains a bull, then that's what he's doing. He's breeding, and that's his job. And each one has that cycle. And so all my kids have been in 4-H from the very beginning of the capabilities of being in 4-H. So they've gone through Clover Buds into 4-H, and I mean we got countless times where we've cried because
Mm.
we left the steer
Yep.
tied up, for its last time. But they realize, they're like, this is good. This is a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
Part of the process. Yeah.
yep.
We moved here to our homestead. Similar story as yours. I'm the city slicker cousin, so I'm one generation removed. And so now we're into the ag space because it's what I wanted. And so we finally made it onto a small homestead. We got about 7.5 acres here in Cody. And as soon as we got here, I got steers. And that was a learning experience because I just was ready to go and I wasn't ready to go. So
Yeah.
we went into some mesh hot wire to start, and my ADD brain left that thing unplugged way more often than I had it turned on.
Yep.
So we were chasing steers down the road because we didn't have our perimeter fence up yet. So
Yeah.
got rid of those. Then we got our goats. Loved goats, but you got to be really prepared for goats too, because those things are smarter than anything I've ever seen. Not necessarily smarter, just mischievous, so they figure it out. But
Yeah.
anyway, my kids just being involved in this, and by the time we got here, they were like, 12 and 14, or right around there. And so, I have a 20-year-old, and I watched as she got older, and I observed the timing of her age and where I started to lose the ability to influence. Like, there's
Mhm.
a certain age where it's like, okay, parents, you've done everything you can up to this point. Hopefully you've passed on the wisdom and the knowledge that you want them to have, because now the rest of the world's influence is kicking in, and they're less, they're not as much of a sponge as they were.
Yep.
And that was right about the age I got my
Yep.
other kids here. So we went straight into it, and it was a blessing. So even though we wasted money buying stuff for enterprises that we weren't, still doing, like the infrastructure for goats, it was a pain in the butt. But what I got out of that with my children was worth every penny we wasted, none of it was a waste, because
Yeah.
that first time we harvested our chickens and we're cutting throats and gutting them and those kinds of things,
Yeah.
and they're like, and then we eat it for dinner.
Yeah.
That completed the loop of being part of this cycle.
Yep.
And it was so
Yep.
important for my kids.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
man, that's awesome.
100%. Yep.
Okay, so you guys your operation, you run miniature Herefords.
Yep.
And
Yep.
tell me about miniature Herefords, because I text you. I've got this small property. I want to raise
Yep.
some things for myself. And
Yep.
I'm also on a small property. So
Yep.
there's going to be the right genetics and the right size of frame for what I'm doing or what I want to do. So I'm really curious in the miniature breed myself, and why you guys got into that.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, I'll just start this. Why we got into it, because I used to race motocross, and I, like you, have I just have an ADD brain, and I needed to have something to do. And so I had a motocross track in the backyard. It was all fenced off. I'm like, well, heck, let's just put some cows out there. So that's kind of how we got started.
That's awesome.
I had basically retired. I was forced to retire because of an injury, and I was racing ATV motocross.
Okay.
So I was forced to retire from it and just get out of it. And so I had all this kind of time on my hands. So going from an athlete and going and training all the time to doing nothing. And I was like, well, and so your mind starts wandering. And I just happened to be actually at the fairgrounds, and a guy that I met, he soon became a good friend of mine, had these small Herefords sitting and I, my grandpa having the farm and so on, and my dad, and it being in 4-H, I saw pictures of these small belt buckle size Herefords, all the way back. So you start looking back, and it's like, huh, well, these are what they had back then, And so I got to visiting with him, and long story short, I wound up buying a couple of pairs from him that fall, and then we put them on the place, and that's kind of where it started. So it was just that's really kind of how that all kind of came to be. Really, it was um, started there. But if you go back and you look at the 50s, 60s, 40s, right in there,
Hmm.
that's all what was then. Even some of um, even some of them coming into the 60s were still in that 900 to 1,000 pound range. And then what ended up happening was the meat packers wanted to see more volume, more weight, to be able
Bigger
to
frames.
fill those train cars. You think about the railroad, right? And you think about what all happened there, because the Angus were belt buckle size too.
Mm.
They were smaller framed cattle too, and they just got bred bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
For the meat packers, because that was the demand. They were trying to get the most
w-
weight out per
More
head going through.
most weight in to fill that. If you figure a cow is going to fill an X amount of space. But
Hmm.
if you can have an X amount of space filled all the way full, higher, all the way through that whole trailer or that train car, you're going to be obviously hauling more weight. So, and then when you get onto the rail, you get into the meat packing and all of that stuff, then you're basically able to figure, a half or a quarter carcass of how that's going to be hanging on the rail, so on and so forth, and to be able to stay more even and more, productive, I guess you could say, or more
M-
consistent.
Maximize efficiency. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
then that's what they were doing, and really, if you notice through the cow history, they went from smaller to larger, and then they went way large, and now they're coming back,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
coming back
I'm just
down.
commenting to stuff on the side. So if you see me looking
Yep,
over, it's just people
yep,
commenting.
yep.
um,
It's so
well,
it's
just real
been a
quick, you're right. When I was working in the slaughterhouse and they're on the rail,
yep,
right? 18 inches apart, I think it's been a while, but 18 inches apart. So you've got the airflow. Your Herefords and the bigger carcasses, they're gonna almost take up the same space, but they're not gonna be it like you said. They're not gonna be as long, so you're
correct,
losing that much volume going through the rail. And I can see
correct,
why maximizing efficiency would lead to where we're at now.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep, and then portion size, consistent portion size, so on and so forth, and so if you have one breed that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the other ones are holding back, then they're gonna be less valued in
Yeah.
the lot or in
Yeah.
the sale barn. And so what do you got? This is an endless cycle that happens. And so with that being said, back in the 70s, the miniature Hereford actually was started by a family uh, that really was kind of, you could say, forethinking in what they were doing. One side of the family was taking all the larger framed Herefords, and there was another portion of the family, Roy Largent, that was keeping all the smaller framed, and he was keeping them and basically keeping them and closing off his size of the herd, or his side of the herd, closing that off, keeping them smaller. So really, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure how miniature got into it,
Oh,
but
yeah, because it's
but
probably the size they actually were.
it would be probably more of like you could a classic Hereford or a
Okay.
heritage Hereford, or and that's why like lowline Angus was actually um switched I forget the date. It was in the mid 2000s, probably 2017, 15,
Mhm.
17, somewhere in there. They
Mhm.
wanted to switch from lowline Angus, and they switched to what are called the Aberdeen Angus. So if
Okay.
you look at the Aberdeen Angus Association, they're more of what would have been original belt
Yeah.
buckle. That's what they
Yeah.
called them back then.
Yeah, interesting. Just for anybody kind of new joining us, just so you guys know, if you're watching on any of our social medias, this is live show and you can comment. And when you comment, we'll see it. So if you have questions about anything that Curtis is talking about, go ahead and ask, and we can respond to those. Um, so the market pushes because they want a very specific type, and so they're going to start paying more for that type, which then incentivizes everybody to get rid of and bag what they
Yep.
had. Heritage breeds that even were probably better for the environment they were actually being raised in, but they weren't bringing the amount of money they needed, or weren't competitive enough. So the transition started happening. You know,
Mhm.
Black Angus, the certified Angus they just did a hell of a marketing job.
Oh,
Because the
yeah.
reality is I can take 4 breeds of steak, line them up, cook them by the same guy, have them on the same finishing program, and you're really not going to know a difference.
Oh,
So, but the market said, we want this size to maximize
yep.
efficiency. Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We just
Right.
didn't know the consequences of forgetting some of the other things when we threw the baby out with
Right.
the bathwater. If we would have known better, it's like some people and people did. There were the outliers that were looked at as the crazy people that didn't
Yeah.
follow suit with the market, and they
Yep.
held on to these heritage breeds, and that's why
Yep.
some of them are making it back. And I think from the ones I've met, in many cases, they held on to them because they understood the ecological impact of that breed for their environment, and that was primarily the reason they didn't switch. They're
Yeah.
like, well, you're all just playing the market game. The right game is to know what's responding better for the environment we're in, the right breed and
Right.
genetics for the environment they're being raised in. Don't bag it all. And those guys hung on to them. I'm assuming,
Right.
right? Just
Right.
looking at how it went.
Yeah, and so just the resilience of these cattle. The you see what you see the fluctuation of, you know, summertime fat and wintertime lean, a lot more on the
Oh yeah.
smaller frame cattle because they're, obviously they're filling less of a carcass. I mean, they're anywhere between 800 to 900 pounds. Some of them are 700 pounds. We've probably got some mamas out there that are 700,
Okay.
750, and then on up to 900-pound mamas. I mean, but they're still at say a 46, 45 height, but their bellies dang near touch the ground, you
Yeah.
know? I mean,
Yeah.
if you've seen some of the videos I've had, you can see
Yeah.
some of those little guys, and they're plump,
Yeah.
but, so where's the efficiency in more legs and more bone and stuff? So that's always been our focus is like, and we actually had, a full size herd of just, Angus, red Angus and black Angus, and, we had that for a while. In fact, we'll probably get into that later, but then we ended
Yeah.
up, you know, um, just seeing the differences between the 2 for sure. So,
Mm. So you did have a different breed before. Now you moved to the switch. So what were you running prior? Well, let me just back up. How long have you been running cattle?
since 2009,
Okay.
we've been running the miniature Herefords,
Okay.
and we've yeah, and we've, um, we've started with that and always had them around. In fact, we had a lot there for a while, and then what ended up happening was we just started seeing the markets for the full size cattle, and so
Mm.
we had more ground, we had some lease ground, we had some other stuff to be able to fill it in with, and so we were like, well, let's get some full size cows. And so we got a group of full size cows. Plus we also bought some more ground. And in the process of buying that ground, you go to the bank, they don't know what a miniature cow is. They don't understand that. They don't understand the value of that, and what we could sell them for. And it's not something that they could just, if they needed to take them back, or if we
Yeah.
defaulted on the loan, they couldn't just take it to a
Oh
feedlot or
yeah.
a auction yard. And so we had to buy a large group of full size cows, and so we ran those for a while. But when it ended up happening was markets were good, and then started dropping, and then it became very obvious that, oh, we're at play here, with these full size cows. And when the markets are good, it's great. But when it's bad, man, there's big costs that go out. I mean,
Mm.
you're talking a lot more feed, a lot more, you just the dollars aren't there. And there was a time there where we were getting 400, 450 for a heifer.
Mm.
And you can't run that mama for that,
No way.
So
Yeah.
dollars just didn't make it out. So, yep.
Um, you have what you this is your second round. I think if I'm saying that right. You were in it before, you had some major hiccups and you're coming back.
Yeah, we've always had the minis and they've never gone away.
Uh-huh.
We've just been slowly building that breed and
Okay.
slowly building that herd. And what that was you would take the calves from the full size herd, because we ran bulls, full size bulls with those, and so on and so forth. You take those calves and take them to the sale barn,
Okay.
and so you got your one check a year kind of deal. And then with the minis, they were always just kind of that supplemental whenever some of the heifers would sell or registered stuff would sell or what have you. Then that would supplement that income throughout the year. So when we took away the full size herd, that was a major hit on us. So yeah, so now this is where we're at with the minis. Now we're like, okay, we're gonna make this work, because I've seen those things be able to be so efficient with what they do. I know how to finish them out. In fact, all of our kids took minis for 4-H all the
Okay.
time, and that wasn't by force of us saying you're taking a mini. It was just they're pleasant to be around. They're
Yeah.
just good,
Yeah.
docile, and fun to be around animals.
Yeah.
And so so that's why they were staying with that. And we know how to finish them out. We've been through this. We know, when to push them, what time of year that they feed the best, et cetera, et cetera. And so last couple of years, we've been slowly building this to where we actually have on hand stuff that's going through the feed program right now, to be able to finish out for our customers. And this is the first time we've adventured off into, you could say, direct to market, other than, selling to family or selling to, a person that wanted a half a steer or a full size or a full steer. So,
Yeah. Couple of things you said there I want to maybe break down for the listeners and even
oh,
myself
sure.
in some cases. So
Sure.
you had full size bulls on the Herefords or on your Herefords for auction because they would provide a bigger frame, a bigger animal.
No, we had the full size bulls on full size cows, and
Oh,
we
gotcha.
ran two
Okay.
separate herds,
Okay. Okay.
two separate systems
You
there.
did say that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really became it became a circus there for a while.
Oh man.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Man.
yep.
Okay. And so got it. And then
I mean, if
when
we
you
did
talk about
anything, it was the opposite. We'd put our miniature bulls on the full size heifers. So
yeah.
then the first time calvers, we didn't have to watch them. I mean, they was just like no issues,
Yeah.
because you're
Right.
talking a 50, 60 pound calf, that heifer just be
Coming
like,
out of a
I'm
full
done.
size heifer. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So it worked
Good
out
point.
great for us.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's a
yep.
great point. Um, you mentioned the phrase they're efficient.
Yep.
So let's break that down. You talk about efficiency. I'm assuming you're talking about efficiency of feed and the utilization of the forage that they have access to,
Yep.
particularly where you're at.
Yep.
Their ability to convert the energy of that forage into usable, pounds, right? Because
Yep.
it's a conversion. You're
Yep.
converting feed into pounds of meat to feed humans.
Yep.
So break that down for us. What's the for the miniature Hereford? What do they like? What's their primary diet? What's their um,
Grass. They
grass? Yeah.
they but here's the thing is they will. So we've done it multiple ways. We've done mob grazing. We've done controlled um, rotational grazing, so on and so forth. And when I'm talking about mob grazing, you're talking about putting them in a certain size dimension block, electric wire block in a fence, and you're moving them per day. And so you're doing a front line and a back line, and you're moving those lines, keeping them only on fresh grass all the way through, and then letting the stuff that's behind that electric wire all the way back grow back
Gotcha. Okay.
and take its time to grow back. So, when you're doing that, they they just spring up and just are just an amazing animal to watch plump up. They get fat quick. Then they hold their condition quick, and for a long time. The one thing about it is, you know, there was some things we had to do with the electric wires when you're talking about moving through electric fence. Um, all your electric fence stuff right now to this day. So like if you buy pigtails, which are step-in pigtail posts,
Yep.
they are at a certain height. And the full-size cows, they don't bother it. My
Oh,
minis, my minis
yeah.
get their shoulders and everything under. Well, if you know a cow's behavior, if they can get their shoulders through, they'll take the zap and they'll go through. And so we'd have we'd have that issue. Calves
Yeah.
were gone all the way, all the time. If we were in a big field, it didn't matter. Calves
Right.
would come back and forth. So I ended up having to make my own height pigtails and then using plastic step-in posts and stuff like that. And we'd have it down a lot lower than what you would normally have it for anything. And it just got to be kind of hilarious because you could actually have the wire not even on and they wouldn't even touch it. They wouldn't even go and bother it, except, you'd have some of those that would kind of go and trim along the edge and they'd test it every now and again.
Yeah.
But so seeing how we were able to use those animals in that kind of I guess in that type of grazing really kind of made me just appreciate their size and their docility because of it. Because you could go out there, you could roll a wire back, put an extra wire up in front, roll that lead wire back, and you could just call them.
Mm.
Just call them. You wouldn't have to herd them, wouldn't have to do anything. You just call them, say, "Come on, cows," and they just right into the next patch. Of course, they knew they were going into green grass,
Yeah.
you know, and follow behind with the once they're done, then you close that line off. So, um, doing that was great, but then also you could take that same herd and you could take an open hillside and you could just let them graze the whole hillside for say, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever. And what was interesting to watch is certain times of the day, they'd be in certain areas, they'd be eating certain things. So they'd be eating the brush, leaves off the brush, sometimes even, nibbling on some of the stuff like the greens of that brush. And then they'd be out in the afternoon on the grass, or they'd be under the trees eating the grass or what have you. At certain times of the day is when those and it's amazing to watch these animals work. It really
Mm.
is.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's the animal units per acre? What is that compared to full size? So for
So
people that don't know, it means how many animals can you carry? I mean, your
yep,
forage is going to impact that, of course, but typically it would be just for the sake of conversation, you can have one cow calf pair per 1 acre, right? If it's a
mhm.
full size. So, and I'm not saying this is what it is. I'm just giving you guys an example. So what would that be if it was your minis?
So you could, if you're in an area like where we're at right now, we're talking, 2 to 3 acres per pair, to be fair and to be
Mhm.
legit. You could say, so let's just go back to your scenario, 1 acre per pair, you could be 1.5 to 2 pairs per
Okay.
acre
Yeah.
is what you could figure, and you'd have the same duration of time. So,
Gotcha.
um So yeah, so you essentially double the amount of footprint. And so like when I was talking about mob grazing, we could put a lot of pounds per square foot of that, on that and create a lot of trample and everything and be able to move through a 30 acre or 40 acre field a lot slower than if you had full size cows.
Yeah.
And so, we could actually utilize and rent smaller acreages.
Yeah. And that's what I'm thinking for my homestead. I got, 7 acres. So that means I could run two head of
Yep.
cattle from you.
Yep.
And because that's what we want to do. We don't have enough ground. I don't want to necessarily build a feed lot. I mean,
Yep.
I'll have a feed bunk, but I don't want to build a
Yep.
feed lot. I'd like them to mill around the property that we fence in for them and then come and get their extra rations. Of course,
Yep.
I don't have enough ground to feed them just on my forage alone.
Right.
but I could finish them out on there. And because of their docility and their
Yep.
size, they'd be great as a little home. They would be great for a homestead, I
They
think.
are perfect. We sell
Yeah.
we sell them all the time
Yeah.
to people that are wanting to raise their own backyard beef. And we sell them, we sell heifers and we sell some steers. Now this year we don't have any left, but we sell heifers, and people take them and grow them out, and then they'll AI them, or they'll bring them, like, specifically if they're close by here, they'll bring them back, and we'll breed. We'll have our bulls. They can run their cows with our herd, and what a great opportunity for people to actually have something in their backyard. I mean, literally, we've had so many friendships started because of that exact thing that you're talking about. People keep in touch, show us. I mean, they get excited about their calves that they get, and so on and so forth. And so you got this relationship with these people that are actually taking charge of their own food source,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
and it's good to see. And there's some things that you got to watch for whenever you have them, that few of animals tend to get
Bored.
made into pets, or made into
Oh,
be the,
yeah.
the
Good
the
point.
babies.
Don't
And
name them.
so, yeah, so when that, well, we name all of ours. My
Yeah, I
wife
know.
names every single one of our cows out there has a name.
That's funny.
It's like, well, so and so's having a calf, and it's like, it's
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 like
hilarious.
fun to raise, hard to slaughter, easy to eat.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
that's how I see it, right?
Yeah, but
Fun to raise, hard to slaughter, and then but there's
yeah,
so much value when you eat what you put work into, and you
yep,
honored that life that was in your care, and you knew how how you were able to provide everything they needed, the comfort,
yep,
everything up until the time it was time to feed your family. I
yep,
mean,
yep.
awesome.
Yeah, and there comes a point where um there's a bit of reality has to happen to people.
Mhm.
We need to understand that f the food you see in the stores doesn't just appear there by magic.
Yeah.
Somebody went through all sorts of efforts to get it to that point, no matter what it is, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Right. Yeah. So you've been in the miniature herd for a long time, but you're just now going to the direct beef market
as our
and
main focus, yeah.
as your main focus. So
Mhm.
you've been doing that a little bit, but mostly selling them on live for people for their own operation.
Correct, yep,
Yeah.
yep,
Well,
yep,
and
and
there's
and
such a
to a lot of 4-H kids, so
yeah,
we'd sell 15 to 20 steers 4-H for the 4-H kids a year.
nice.
And so around our whole area, our whole community, there for a while, there was many Herefords and many Baldies
Mm,
all around the area. So it was
mm,
great. But we decided we decided that Chris and I are at the point with the other kids, our you could say our homemade kids. There you go.
yeah.
Um, Um, they've grown, and they're starting their own families, and they're moving on and doing
Mhm.
their own thing. And um, for us to be able to continue to show and to do all that stuff, that's a lot of effort right now with the toddlers we have and such. And so Chris and I are like, we got to figure out, something different here. We gotta. And so right now we're in that. We normally would sell them at a certain time and get rid of them, and to now we're holding them back. And
Mm,
so that income there for that is gone. Where'd it
yeah.
go? Well,
'Cause otherwise you'd be at the auction or wherever grabbing that money in, but you're
yep,
taking the gamble that if you hold them and
yep,
finish them out, there's gonna be people waiting for them.
yep, yep.
Yeah.
That's our hope and prayer that we that we can actually skate through with this and start building this a little better, because my goal is to, where we had that relationship and friendship and one-on-one with the people that would buy those animals live, that we would then be able to have more of those conversations and more of those kind of relationships with people that would buy it in the freezer.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's our goal.
Yeah. Well, and I think, there's a shift happening in our nation, and I kind of opened up talking about tariffs and so forth. And I think if people had the ability to spend the time that folks like you and I do looking at our food system as a whole, they would understand the urgency to know who their farmer is.
Yeah.
You know, it'll be cheaper than buying it by the pound if you buy it in a quarter, half, or whole.
Right.
But you have to have a larger volume of dollars up front, and
Correct.
that's challenging for people. But often farmers will split it, and people will come together and say, "Hey, we want to buy a beef. Let's go in it together." Now we're all sharing a quarter of beef for a whole beef. But in your case, the size of the animal it's a smaller frame, and so
Yep.
now you would only have two people split it, and they would have probably beef for what, three? I guess the consumption amount would matter, but how much do they finish on the like packaged meat out the door? What does that look like?
So they'll finish on the rail anywhere between, we've had some as low as 250 on
Okay.
the rail for, so 125 a half.
Hmm.
But on all up on up to 350 pounds finished hanging,
Okay.
and some more. We've had some that have been higher, but
Yeah.
that depends on the frame size of the animal,
Yep.
not necessarily the amount of feed that goes, because there's some of them little guys that you can put as much feed as you want into it, and they aren't getting any bigger.
Yeah.
It's just how it is. So what ends up happening is, what I have some friends that have bought some whole beefs from us.
Yeah.
And the reason they buy a whole beef is because of that exact thing that you're talking about. They don't have to split it with anybody. They get all the cuts, they get all the material, all the stuff they want off of it. It's the same, as far as the amount wise. The portion size is smaller, you know.
That's your ribeyes aren't going to be as big because it's a smaller
No,
frame.
yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, you're talking, what's a normal ribeye? 16 inches, somewhere in there, from a full size, 16, 18 inches, somewhere in there.
Yeah, as you're talking, I think the perfect demographic for your frame, your cut size, empty nesters.
Yep.
And I say that because I hear from older couples that are empty nesters all the time that
Yep.
grandma's not sitting down and eating a 16-ounce ribeye.
100%. Yep.
Grandma's looking for 6-7 ounce ribeyes, small or
Yep.
smaller, right? Because even that
100%.
might be more for her. So as you're talking, I'm like, oh man, I get that question so much.
Yep.
And as I'm learning all the different, values of the different breeds, that's a perfect audience for you because they got 200 pounds. The portions are perfect for them. That one beef will probably last them almost a whole year if it's an empty nest couple.
Easy,
Yeah.
a whole year. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of amazing, how good they are, and how
Yeah.
well they finish out, and the amount of beef you get. I mean, so here, the roast, if you divide a rump roast, typically it's about 5 pounds, 6 pounds for a rump roast. If you divide that in half, you got a 3 pound rump roast.
Yep.
A 3 pound roast, or chuck roast. Let's go chuck roast. If you go a 3 pound roast, that's, pretty reasonable for a,
Oh yeah.
three person, 4 person family,
That's what
and
we
you can
cook.
have, yeah.
4 people in our house will do a 3-pound roast and it's perfect. And we might even have a little bit left over for lunch the next day.
Yeah, and I've got a picture I'm sending to you right now of ribeyes, actually, or rib steaks on the on getting cooked.
Yeah. Send it over
Actually,
and I'll throw it up.
yeah, and so they're perfect size. I mean, but the big thing for us that we see is people appreciate the fact that they, if they buy a whole beef, they get essentially every cut to themselves,
Yeah.
you know,
And the
and
tallow, like you said, all
and the
the other
tallow.
stuff, the tallow,
Yep.
the organs. Do you guys finish on corn or grain? Or are you only grass fed and finished, or what does that look like?
No, no, we do, we feed on every cow is grass fed. That's one
Yeah,
thing that
right.
I
Right.
try to really educate my
Yeah,
customers about, is because there's not a cow out there that doesn't eat grass. They all are grass fed.
right.
It's just a certain amount of time when you bring them in to finish them. And so what we found over the years, if we just did, um, grass fed, grass finish, it takes a lot longer. It takes almost another cycle of seasons
Okay.
for us to be able to finish them out on grass. And
Yeah.
then the quality isn't as consistent as I'd like it to be, as I've always
Okay.
liked it to be, because you always had to wait for the tannins to run out of the grass. So when you look at a grass, anybody, even the listeners, if they go out in the springtime or summertime and you take a stem of grass and you put it in your mouth when it's green, right? It's bitter
Yeah.
flavor. And that's
Yeah.
what goes into the meat. So guys that live over like Eastern Montana, like my dad and so on and so forth, have the ranch over there. Their grass, their wheatgrass is called, um, it it browns out quicker. And so what
Okay.
ends up happening is the tannins are running out of that. If you take that same stem in the springtime and in the late fall or late summer, they taste completely different. That's going into your beef.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So when you bite into a browned out stem of grass, that actually it almost tastes sweet, right?
Yeah.
It's not bitter. So when you when you're dealing with these carcasses or trying to build the perfect carcass for people,
Yep.
you want that consistency. And the
Yeah.
only way we found to do the consistency is to bring them in no matter what time of year it is, bring them in and put them on a ration of dry hay. It starts
Okay.
getting getting the tannins worked out of them. So you work that in dry hay. And then for about the last anywhere between 60 to 120 days, depending on where we're at, you know, we're looking at, putting them on a pea oat barley ration, you know. Um, that's really an ideal ration for doing them. And we put a lot more oats, whole oats, mind you, not rolled, not processed, not nothing. Just I go to local farmers that are around here and I buy big um those big super sacks, they're called, of 1-ton
Yep.
bags
Hmm.
of oats, and then we actually mix it by hand every day. We go and we put a certain amount, 2 pounds of barley in, 2 pounds or 5 pounds of oats, and then depending on the mix, depending on who we're
Hmm.
feeding, what we're feeding, and then we'll put in a ration that is a pelletized mix from our local stores.
So just to back up, when you say you bring them in, you're only talking about the ones that are ready for finishing.
Correct. Yep. Yep.
Yep. So any time of year, it's the ones that are ready in the cycle to be finished.
Yep.
Will you adjust the ration based on the time of year? Do you guys have that
We
figured out?
do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we do. So like when it's hot out, you don't want to pump a lot of barley to an animal. Barley is kind of like, if you can imagine, like rocket fuel.
It's
And
hot.
it gets
Yeah.
hot. Yeah. So certain times of the year you don't want to be handling out rocket fuel at certain
Yeah.
times of the day. You run the
Right.
risk of, and that's kind of the same scenario. So you find things that are a little bit slower, a little bit that. So like in the summertime, if we're bringing them in the, say, early summer or so, we'll go down to the feed store and we'll get pelletized alfalfa pellets
Okay.
or what's called cow cake, right?
Okay.
And
Yep.
we'll put that with that, and then we'll mix it with the oats and barley. And so I'm utilizing the local community farmers around here by buying their oats and barley
Yeah.
in
Awesome.
bulk and being able to bring it home at a you could say a discount because I'm buying it in bulk.
And it's
And
local. They don't have the fuel charges on there and all the other stuff. Yep.
yeah, and whether it's GMO or not, I- it's grown here locally, and
Yeah.
at some point there has to be some sort of give in it because you gotta. I'm not gonna go driving, all the way to Minnesota to get a
Yeah.
specific certified feed.
Yeah.
So
So you're worried about GMO on one side, but then if you're also worried about pollution, I'm gonna use that
yeah,
loosely, but you're
yeah,
worried about the
yeah,
pollution going clear across the
yeah,
country to bring it back
absolutely.
and the food miles involved in that. But the other
Yep.
thing I would say too, though, is there's a group of researchers, and I don't know if he's still a part of this group, but Dr. Stefan Van Fleet. They're studying the impact of the
Okay.
feed that the cow is eating and what it does and all these, like, a really in-depth study.
Yep.
I asked him if there was any evidence that glyphosate, if they ate something sprayed with glyphosate, if that was going to transfer into the beef. And he said, we haven't found any evidence of that yet. Now, it doesn't mean they're not, that doesn't mean it's not there. They just haven't found it yet. I'm
Right.
also curious, and I'd love to get him on the show, but I'm also curious to know, whatever the concerns with GMO feed is, does that concern still exist when it transfers from being consumed to the cow into the meat. I don't know.
Right.
I'm just curious, but
Right.
I agree. The other thing is we got a lot of people to feed. This whole thing of, because I
Yeah.
agree with you, you have to be real, right? I like electric cars are cool. Do I think every single person should have to drive an electric car? No, because that wouldn't work in Cody. So
It wouldn't
have
work
it
here either.
available. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you go to Phoenix,
Yeah.
and you could argue that doesn't work anywhere because they're
Yep.
using fossil fuel to charge them. But
Yep.
even still, taking all that away, you still it's more convenient in Phoenix, Arizona to drive an electric car than it is
100%.
where there's no chargers. So what I'm saying is one is not better or worse than the other. You just let people choose.
Yep.
Well, the environment we're in now, we've gone so far away from these natural methods of raising and growing food and having the forage to feed the livestock that we need to fatten them for the protein side.
Right.
It's going to take time to get back there.
Right.
The reality is, how long have we been eating this stuff already? As long as you're, look, if you're complaining about the food having GMO or having glyphosate or whatever, but then you're also doing these other behaviors in life,
Yeah.
whether it's overconsumption of food or overconsumption of alcohol or any of these other behaviors, you got to look at it as a whole.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm very much passionate about regenerative agriculture, but the beef I have in my freezer right now was finished 60 days on grain.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing is I can guarantee at any time of the year when I finish it on the way that we figured it out, I can guarantee that the marbling's going to be where the people are used to having, and the taste is where people are used to having.
Yes.
There's just something about it when you're able to put them on a ration and feed them at a certain time. I mean, these guys get, like I said, they get hay 24/7, right? They
Yeah.
got enough hay in front of them to eat all day if they want.
Yeah. Free
And
choice.
then
Yep.
and then one time a day, we put down the ration that we've mixed with oats and barley and peas, and then what ends up happening is you get a consistent feed when you look at it, consistent
Yeah.
meal.
Yeah.
So
How many days on that type of ration before you take them to slaughter? Because you're paying for that, right? So it's not like you want to
mhm.
have them in there for that long. You've got
Yep,
to almost down. It is down to a science. Okay, we
it
start them
is.
now. We're going to
Yep,
give them this much weight each day in this ration because that's going to equal this
yep,
many pounds of gain. So, how
yep.
long are you putting them on that?
So we use the method of we want to see about 2 pounds per day, um, per pound of that animal. So or excuse me, 2 pounds a day gain. So we want to see that gaining of 2 to 3 pounds a day. And so what ends up happening with the ration is we end up increasing it as time goes on
Hmm.
to start building that up. So it will be anywhere, like I said, between 60 to 90 days. There's some that we've stretched over into kind of into that 120-day range. And the reason is because they start slower and you've got a larger group of them sitting there, and so you see the ones that kind of started slower, they're the ones that may get pushed off the bunk further or just aren't as aggressive, and so
Yeah,
you
to
watch
get to the
those.
feed. Yeah,
Correct. Yep.
yeah,
And so you just watch them, and you can just tell once you've finished them out, as many as we've done over the years, you can just tell when one just needs another 10 days, 20
yeah,
days,
yeah,
you can just tell.
yeah.
Yep.
When I asked in the presentation that Dr. Van Fleet did, he was talking about that, there's actually evidence for an increase in certain nutrients when they are given that corn and grain because there's nutrients in that doesn't come from just
Yep.
the forage.
Yep.
It's when they're raised, you know, not the majority, but a much longer time on grain that you start offsetting the value of what was in the natural forage.
Right.
Right? So you get into 120 days and beyond, you'll start seeing some of the other phytonutrients and the omega-6 to 3 ratio starts to skew if it's too long. So you
Yep.
guys are looking for that sweet spot because like you said, if you're not used to grass-fed beef, you'll think the beef is spoiled. And
Yeah.
that's not true. It's your palate. Your
Yep.
palate isn't trained for that kind of flavor.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, everybody used to butcher the milk cow when she'd become,
Yeah.
unmilkable. And so you think about all the steaks and all the stuff that came off of that.
Oh,
Holy cow, So I I just tell you, I I go for the taste.
Yeah.
I really do. I try to make sure that I've got a good mix of ration in there and try to get them as long as you can. And if you have an animal that is a 4-H steer, let's just say you go to a 4-H auction and you buy a 4-H steer, you'll understand how good they taste. They are
Yeah.
just so darn tasty. So
Yeah. What about maintaining their health? How are they with keeping sickness away? I mean, I know that's the condition you're raising them in too, but
yeah.
what's that been like for you guys? Do you find that you're doctoring them often
No,
or not? Or I mean,
not
you
not
wouldn't.
anymore. Not any more than we did when we had the full size herd
Okay.
parallel with them. What you do find is because of their white faces, they do run the risk a lot easier if they're in taller grasses that are stemmy or hard. They'll get poked and they get irritated. Then the flies get attracted to the white faces, and then you got potentially run into pink eye problems. So you got to really you got to really have a mineral program, and the health has to be in a good spot for them to be able to fight that off naturally
Mhm.
without having an issue. So our mineral program has gone through kind of a good cycle, you could say. So for a long time we were doing, trying to do certain minerals and certain types of brands of minerals and so on, and we just didn't see the impacts the way we have when we switched to what is called Pharmatan, and that's, you can look that up eventually. Pharmatan is actually a tannin. It's actually a powder that's been a tree that's been ground down and made into a powder. And so we use that, and then we mix it with Redmond salt. The
Mm.
Redmond Selenium 90 salt is perfect for our area up here. And we mix that together. We have a cement mixer that we actually take the mineral and we dump the mineral in, and we dump, excuse me, the Pharmatan in, and we dump the salt in, and we just let it mix for a little bit, probably 10 minutes or so. Then we scoop it out and take it, and the cows just love it. Now the Pharmatan helps with the gut linings. It helps actually coat the gut lining, and almost like you could say not sap, but kind of a thick lining to it, to where they're taking that nutrients in as they're eating the grass. It's actually breaking down inside their stomach better, so on and so forth. And uh, because of those nutrients that are in that, it actually has helped with scours. It helped with a lot of our herd health. So what we've noticed since we switched to Pharmatan and the Redmond salt mix, rather than just doing straight mineral and then just a white salt or anything like that, what we found is that they receive or are receptive to um, a lot more conditioning. So if we are worried about flies and so on and so forth, we'll throw a little bit of garlic in the salt, in the
Mhm.
mix.
Yep.
They respond quickly to it. It's like all of a sudden, 3 days later, you're seeing, the garlic is actually doing the work that it
Keeping the
needs to.
flies away.
Yeah.
Is that the Redmond stuff as well?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, so for a long time, we've been doing garlic forever. I don't under it's like this new fad
Yeah.
or new phase, and it's like, well, did we start this or what? Because for the longest time, we were mixing garlic in with our salt for a long time, and we just go down to the Amish store and we just buy the bulk garlic, powdered garlic, and mix it in with our cement mixer or whatever. And so we were doing that for a long time. We were doing diatomaceous earth. We were doing
Mhm.
Redmond salt and yeah, the garlic for our summertime mix. Well, then we found out about this Pharmatan mix or product, and we actually started using that. And I tell you what, um, we went from calves, having scours and so on and so forth, to maybe one a year we're treating for scours
Wow.
or anything. Yep. Um,
So you're
so
using
it's
natural supplements to prevent the need of any other
yep,
potential need for any
yep,
pharmaceutical intervention. Yeah.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
We toured the Redmond salt mines, and we're affiliate partners with them, and on the consumer goods side, you know, the Redmond salt and
Yeah.
so forth. But we toured the place, and I got there first time there, and I was like, man, it smells so good here. It's like garlic. And they're like, I'm like, why does it smell like garlic around here? Like, oh, that's one of our products. So they use
Yep.
it just even around their facility,
Yep.
and it works. I mean, it's
Yep.
pretty amazing.
I
Yeah.
I love Redmond salt. I would love to be able to tour that facility someday and be able to go and see it because, um, you can take stuff like that and the cows chase you down to get to it. That tells
Uh-huh.
you something, you know? It really does. It tells you something. And um, I always joke. I always tell people, well, I put enough salt out there in the feeders and stuff that your cows are already pre-salted. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I appreciate all that information on these miniature Herefords, because again, I was curious on that topic for those of us that are getting into the homestead space. I mean, it's one of the fastest growing movements. Thank God. I
right.
mean, really,
Yep. Yeah,
I think it's safe
truly.
to say that most people doing that are doing it because God's called them to get back to the land.
Yeah,
And so this is very helpful because the cost of land is so high right now. Most
yeah,
people are only looking at, you know, if they're depending on where they live, at not a whole lot of acreage. So
right.
that doesn't matter. Victory Gardens of World War II, it's time for those again. We have we've just got we've got a lot of work to do. And so
Yeah, yeah,
the more people that can be growing food and considering food, the better off we are as a nation. But I want
100%.
to just shift gears here for a second, and if you got to go, we'll make it quick. But
No, I'm good. I'm good. Yep.
um, just want to learn a little bit more about your family life, if you're okay talking about that. So
Sure.
you guys have your homegrown kids, and how
Yep.
old are they?
Uh, so, let's see, 26, 27, on down to 18.
Okay,
Yep.
and how old are you?
I'm 52.
Okay, and you guys are now fostering children.
Yep.
And how old
Yep.
are how many foster children do you have, and how old are they?
So we've got two foster children that are um, 4 years old and 2 years old, and then we have four adopted that
Wow,
were out of the foster system, and they're 11 on down to 2 years old. The two
man.
year old that we had him since he was born, and he was in NICU for quite some time, and there was some times there we didn't know if he was gonna, be
Wow.
alive. So, yeah, so it's a blessing to see this for sure. Yep.
Why? I mean, ranching is a big job. You already
Yeah.
raised 3, 4 kids.
Mm.
You're now stewarding so many other kids,
Hmm.
and adding that to your plate. Why?
Uh, Somebody's got to. These kids need a home.
Mm,
Um, your heart just breaks, and now you got me just about ready to break down here. But these guys need it. I mean, they don't have it. They don't have what we can provide for them. They come out of some really rough situations, um, and when you understand that we're all made in the image of God, and each life is valuable to the nth degree in His eyes. um, your heart and your mind takes a different course. You
mm,
see people differently. Um, yeah, it's easy to be mad in this world today, and it's easy to be hated or hateful in this world today, but it really takes something special to actually look at a situation and say, "Send me, I'll do it."
mm. Yeah. Um, you told me in a conversation in the past, foster kids that have come through,
Mm,
and then they go somewhere else, and they go back to the foster
yep,
care system, and they ask to go to the farm.
yep,
There's just that connection. I mean, God knows what he's doing. You know,
yeah,
we're only so disconnected in recent, you know, human history.
right,
And so having those kids on the farm where they get to experience the whole cycle, like you talked about, the importance early on, the
yep.
importance of learning the whole cycle. And I think I'm curious if you yeah.
So yeah, I can kind of pick up what you're getting ready to ask, but so you think about it, the kids that we get in the system or from the system, we love each and every one of them. Each and every one of them is actually on a prayer list for us that we keep, as our own. And the thing about it is, it doesn't matter whether they're here for 3 days or for 3 weeks or for 3 months. They get to experience something that I think um, people don't really appreciate. They get to have freedom,
Mm.
and the farm provides the freedom. It's it's organized freedom, or you could say it's freedom at certain times, but there's places that they can go and they can be adventurous and they don't have worries that they have to worry about. They can just go and be kids,
Yeah.
you know, um, ride bikes, build jumps in certain areas of the farm or whatever, and they just get to play and just go and do, but they get a connection. Not only do they get to go play, but we get to go out and say we go out in the side by side and go drive through the cows, and they get to see the cows, and they may have never actually interacted or seen a cow, and you'll have a couple of them that'll come up and they'll butt their wet nose right up into the cab of the side by side, and the kids are freaked out, but then they lick them, and it's hilarious, but yet that's a connecting point. That's something that they get to see. Oh, these animals aren't scary. These animals are. And then they get to see, the be out and about, and I think there's a freedom to it. I don't let the kids have video games or anything like that. We just don't. And
Mhm.
there's plenty to do around here that you don't need to sit inside and be bogged down with it. Let's get out and go be adventurous. Let's go do something adventurous, and let's go do a project, or you know, just something simple. Go sit outside. I mean, how many times would you sit outside on your porch and just take it in? That's the same thing these kids need. They
Yeah.
need that.
Have you always been this way, or was there a moment in your life where things changed? And what I mean be this way, be focused on God and being of service and being at His
Yeah.
call to be a tool. Because
Yeah.
you mentioned being in motocross, and I've got friends that in motocross. So the environment you're in can a lot of times. I mean, I was in the military. The environment you're in and spend the most time in will dictate, in many cases, your
Yep.
behaviors. So I'm just curious for you.
Yeah.
Have you always been this way, or has this been a journey for
So
you?
yeah, no. So I've always been somewhat connected. Grew up in a Catholic church, going to school there, and that's another story for another time.
Yeah.
Um, but I ended up being going somewhere else. Not in a forced way, but
Yeah. Yeah.
just got released. How about that?
Yeah.
And then so, um, but that's and so kind of grew up in that fashion. Loving God in ways, and then kind of through high school, end of high school, and stuff, kind of just drifted away from it. Kind of found some interest, you know, built some show trucks and did that for a while, and then got into ATVs and racing ATVs motocross wise, and then into ATV racing the cross country, or you could say the National Work Series, what it was. So it was kind of a Grand Prix style, so
Hmm.
it was a mix of stuff.
Hmm.
And so you're in amongst all of that, and you're growing your family, and you're doing your thing, and there's things that you should be doing, but you just don't have the bandwidth to be able to get that done.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, I remember when my shoulder, for the last time, my last shoulder surgery. I've had 3 shoulder surgeries. My shoulder been dislocated 17 times. And and so knowing that at the last time it happened, I was like, "All right, I understand. You got something else for me." And I didn't want to. I mean, I wasn't living life pointed towards God that much,
Right. Right.
but I knew. I mean, there was times where people would ask me stuff, specifically Bible stuff or what have you, and I'd be able to just like, you know,
Yeah.
nonchalantly rattle it off and be able to help them out or whatever. And so I've always had that gift, but people that know me know that I wasn't living life like I should have.
Hmm.
But once my kids started getting older and so on, and we started being involved more with the community, um, we started seeing the need for foster kids, for being involved in that, for
Mm.
and there's some moments in my life that did force the change in me. There was a heartbreak in many ways, and we can get into that sometime in another podcast about some trauma and some things that happened, and that sent me in a whirlwind for a while. But I didn't get far away. God never let me get far away. Kept people in my life um, that were walking alongside me. And so it was good. And then really got involved with the community and started seeing the need, and it's like, who's gonna fend for these kids? And we were like, God send us, we'll do it.
Yeah. Awesome. What a great service
Yep.
to just to the kids, to your community. I mean, as a whole, I mean, the a big part of the challenges we're dealing with in the nation is the destruction of the nuclear family,
Yep.
and that's
100%.
been Satan's war for a long time, and we're suffering the consequences of that. So
Yep.
to be able to find these kids and give them a different future, because that's all. I mean, mentorship.
Yep.
I mentored adults, and the mentorship of adults is really healing childhood wounds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I went through the same thing myself, and it was healing childhood traumas and things that didn't know where to put them, and that was, in some cases due to lack of mentorship and lack of the right leadership.
Yep.
And so you
100%.
can, and if you've got kids, man, that was the thing for me too. It just, God showed me the need to put more focus on my kids, and then recognize, like, oh, I'm the example. My
Yep.
behaviors are the example. And
Yep.
so, but yeah.
That's a hard one right there, AJ, because there's always somebody watching, and it's like,
Yeah.
son.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. That's
Yep.
awesome.
Yep.
Well, we've got everybody super hungry for your miniature Hereford beef, and you're not quite ready to be shipping it to anybody yet. So,
We're working on that. We
yep,
will hopefully be within the next couple of weeks. We'll have everything dialed in. Right now, we're working with Jalen and trying to dial in our boxes and
yep,
and it's so it is amazing what goes into selling direct to customer.
right.
I'm not kidding. When you're talking about somebody that calls you up and says, "Hey, I want a half a beef," or sends you a text, "Hey, how much for a full beef," or whatever, that's easy.
Yeah,
You just come and get it, and we
yeah,
when we just do it that way. But to really forethink about how to build box beef or box packages or box deals like we have on the from the farm,
yep,
to forethink that and to be able to then say, okay, now how do we get it to them?
yeah,
Then to go through that process. I mean, right now before we jumped on here, I was trying to figure out, do I sell by the package or do I sell by the pound? Because it should be easier to sell by the package because, packaging a one ribeye or one rib steak versus selling by the pound on a rib steak is going to be easier for me to be able to just boom with the customer, boom, I have it done. And so I have to either, you know,
yeah.
it's going to, so it just, it's
I'm
kind of mind blowing to me
Yeah.
how much goes into it.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought this up, because I mean, that's what we're working to do from the farm, and you're new enough that we're still building as we're going. A year from now, somebody like you jumps on, and it's all going to be a simple package, and it's ready to go.
Yeah.
You came in early enough. We're still building the software and doing the marketing and doing
Yep.
all the things at the same time, and so
And
we
that's
appreciate
fine.
the patience. But it is a lot. But the reason I'm glad you brought it up is because as producers are working to change how they do things to be more available for consumers, consumers also have to understand the logistics and the challenges of changing the system and be
100%.
willing to meet halfway.
Yep.
Selling a la carte is very, very difficult. In other words, for you to
Yep.
go onto Curtis's site and only buy steaks, what's going to end up happening is you're going to leave him with all of we call them offcuts, the ground beef, the roast, the flank steaks, the things that
The
people
soup
don't really
bones.
know. Soup bones, yeah. So you'll buy all of his steaks because everybody wants those. Those are easy to sell. Now you're stuck with all this other inventory.
Mhm.
Or you can make it easier on a producer and buy the whole quarter or half. So then they just put it in big boxes and send it, and you divvy it up. That helps. And so you could help them by doing that. Or, like you said, doing it by the pound is the a la carte model. Or you have a box. Like, here's a 10-pound box of assortment, where you can meet those producers halfway. As the consumers would be like, okay, I'm going to adjust my habits at home.
Yep.
Like, that's what we do. And we cook a lot more variety, because
Yep.
we understand that to be a part of a system that is sustainable, that works, that isn't built for convenience over what actually is sustainable, we need to meet our producers where they're at, and understand those are the challenges on their side.
Yep.
It isn't going to work another way. Now, there are producers that produce enough that they can offer these a la carte options, and they might
Yep.
have an outlet for the ground beef to a restaurant. But it's consumers also learning the system we've lived in wasn't okay. It wasn't great. It worked for
Mhm.
the time it worked. It scaled and did so many things, but we're now seeing that wasn't parts of it weren't the best.
Correct. Yep.
Right. And we can't look at the whole sit. And I was very much a purist in the beginning of all this. Like, nope, CAFO's bad, regen good, it's right down the middle.
Right.
The more you really understand the complexity of our system and the amount of people there is to feed, and then policies, you got BLM land that takes up so much of the West that you're mitigated on what you can raise. There's so much to it. This is about
Yep.
starting the process. This is about meeting the people where they're at, and those consumers willing to start to make a better food system start to adopt these
Yep.
new ways of doing things.
Yeah, 100%. Because you go back in the 1800s, early 1800s, and so on, you look at what was being done then. People were buying, half whole,
Yep.
whatever, and having it, or they would buy, certain amounts of certain things, um, essentially buying a quarter of a beef, and then if they couldn't consume it in that certain amount of time, they were drying it, they were canning it, they were processing it in some sort of way to be able to have that in the future. And so when Armour, I can't remember his first name, Armour came along, Armour Hot Dogs, if you remember back in
Yeah.
early 1800s, or mid 1800s, mid to late 1800s. He started this whole problem, you could say, because
Yeah.
what he was doing was he was like, okay, well, we'll just cut these all in parts and pieces, and we'll take them to the deli, and the deli started selling them in parts and pieces, so people got this free reign to be able to have. If you want to go to buy a ribeye every day, you can go buy a ribeye every day, kind of thing,
Interesting.
right?
Yeah.
And then he would use all of the end cuts and so on and so forth and process them a different direction. And there wasn't a single bit of the animal that was wasted, which was good. But on the other side of it, it was at the waste, or at the you could say the detriment of us as humans, as people. We lost certain abilities to do certain things, and that really is kind of what I look at it a little differently. I think that was the demise of how we related with each other. I really do.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's the butterfly effect. One small thing here, and multiple decades later, this
Yep.
this is the course.
Yeah. Yeah. And
We're
we're
going to
trying to
spend
get back to it.
yeah, yeah.
You know?
Our message is going forward is a lot more about what we can do to be successful,
Yeah.
not so much what's got us here. Yeah, we had this time in history where you had small families doing the victory gardens, doing what they could on their own for them and their neighbors, and then big get big or get out came along. Right, it
Correct.
happened
Yep.
happened sooner than that, but that's really the phrase that led us to where we're at.
Yep.
So it's reimagining what America would look like if we didn't divert
Yep.
and work our way back to that. We had
Yep.
6 million farms and ranches in 1930. We're down to 1.8 million. We
Yep.
have to go back to
Yeah,
increasing.
we're fall and the average age of your American rancher is 60 something, 61, 63, something like that.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's
Yeah.
insane. That means you got generations of older ranchers that either one, their kids aren't wanting to take it over, or they don't have any kids. We have people all around our area that don't have children. And the ranchers are getting up in that age where, and it's like, are you guys forethinking this? Are you guys looking forward of this, of like, how can I pass this on, and not looking to scalp the back of the young generation coming in by saying, hey, then you need to pay, X number of dollars for this ground if you want to jump into ranching. That's a huge burden. Why don't they take them in and intern them, teach them how to run that ranch the way that you've been running, or teach them maybe certain values and certain things, and slowly allow them to be able to start managing the ranch and taking it over while you're sitting and collecting a check as time goes on, finishing out and living your life, capitalizing on the ground that you've already developed. Awesome. But yet allowing the younger generation to come up and have something to be able to strive for, to have a goal for.
Right. And the other side of it too is if it doesn't go that route, it's going to go by the way of big corporations buying it up. There's a lot of, and it's just out of necessity. There are capital groups raising billions of dollars to go buy up these ranches and then put them under management. I don't like that at all. And I don't know what else we can do when the cost per acre would never justify purchasing it by an individual person for food production.
100%.
So I've met some of these groups, and some of them are led by really great people that have wholesome intentions. The concern is what happens over time in perpetuity, and that as that group changes hands, right? So
one's going to get sold out to the next, it.
Yeah. It's like, I think of it like the checkoff. The checkoff actually is it's a great idea in concept. And probably when they rolled it out, hey, for every cow you send, we're going to collectively market. So send us $1 and we're going to promote beef. Beef is what's for dinner. So when it was first founded and first running, it probably made sense. Now, I don't know, maybe it was only founded for exports, but that concept of a collective dollar to market everybody's beef to America, to know the value of American beef, is not a bad idea. But the people that control it determine whether it's a good idea or not. And it's no longer functioning the way it should.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm with you 100% on that. And I think that, to be honest, I feel that needs some reform. It needs it needs a lot of reform, because where are those? I have them, and I've put them up on some of my Instagram reels and stuff like that of like beef, what's for dinner. And I do that because it's like, where are these commercials now?
Yes.
Where are they? They don't, you don't see them anymore. Nobody knows about it. Everybody says that.
Yeah. And if every producer was paying $1 per head they sold.
Correct.
What this is my argument.
I want to see that commercial. Dang it.
And why didn't we see it even more when the cattle industry was fighting fake and lab grown meat? Where was all those millions and millions of dollars contributing to the advertisement of American beef? And my thought was this: either the system is antiquated, the people that are running it don't know how to meet the people where they're at. So if they're out there claiming that they are doing the marketing and no, this money is going where it's supposed to, then you need to hire some new marketers, because they don't know what they're doing. Or it's intentional. They are actually intentionally not using it where it was meant to go. Which is it? So anyway, but
which is an answer that literally each day you can get both sides of it answered with some sort of some sort of statement. Differently. And it's, I don't know, I'm with you.
I asked my cousin, I said, how bad does the beef checkoff bother you? He's like, dude, he's a rancher in Nevada. He's like, I'm so busy and I get these other bills from the state for certain things that I don't have time to go and put up a fight for $1.
You don't.
I just work harder to pay the $1. And he goes, I'm just too busy. And that's the challenge. These producers are under such a heavy thumb, they can't even advocate for themselves. And in many cases, like the Point Reyes, they get put in gag orders until it's just swept under the rug and they disappear. So anyway, but there's a shift in America. People are seeing it.
I think so.
The consumer, from the farm is here to replace the checkoff.
Yep.
That's maybe some fighting words, but because we see it
Watch it.
as the people, we're feeding the people by the people. So
Yep.
we know this system needs reform, but we've said that for how long and it's not been reformed. So
Right.
okay, let's just go do it ourselves. Let's bring the people
Yep.
together, bring the people with their hands in the dirt with the people that want to honor and respect that, cut out all the middlemen and just build a new sandbox.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, be prepared because there's going to be a lot of those video clips that I have of old commercials of beef what's for dinner and
yeah.
all of that. They're going to be coming up on the Instagram reels and the Facebook stuff because I want to draw people back to that
Yeah.
because there was a time, I don't want to say it was a Cinderella time, but kind of it was where when you were a rancher, you were viewed as a hero. You
Yeah.
weren't viewed as the most extreme climate dangerous person you ever met. You know, it's frustrating because it's like you're feeding the people and you're getting your hand bit at the same time.
Yep. That so this book right here, Red Famine, is about the Holodomor in Russia, in
Okay.
Ukraine during Stalin's reign. And what you're talking about is communism at its finest. They gaslight the producers to the urban environment, and they turned the urbanites against the rural communities, the ones producing their food, and then it led to famine. Of course.
Yep. Why
So
wouldn't it?
yeah, these are the ones growing your food, and yet somehow they through messaging they turn the people against they bite the hand that feeds them. That's why we're saying
Right.
no, let's shake the hand that feeds us. So
Yeah. I love that because that was what when we saw when I saw your advertisement come across, I'm like, seriously. I'm like, this answers the questions, and it allows us. So I was like, I got to get on with these guys. So I like almost like the first commercial I saw or first ad I saw. I'm like, yeah, I need to message them. And so I was just
awesome.
like, I popped a message to you, and it was like, yeah, instantly. So
That's great, and that's uh we our culture in our company is we pray before our team meetings.
mhm,
We don't expect people to be of the same theology we are, but we pray before our meetings and we just ask
right,
them, to bow their head and think of their own the creator in their mind if that's the case.
yep,
But we do that because we're asking for discernment and guidance because the battle is so big
yep,
that we can't do that. I'm not even doing this because I wanted to. I'm doing this because God called me to. And so when
yeah,
you hear that message, makes me grateful because I'm asking, what's the message that I've got to put out there to reach the
yeah,
people, both the producers and the consumers?
right,
Because producers have had so many decades of people coming along promising to make something different just to let them down. And
yep,
so just to even have a conversation, I mean, it makes me so happy when I have a guy like you calling, like, how do we do this? What are you up to? You interviewed me to make sure I'm
yeah,
am who I say I am because people
yep,
can lie all the time and they do,
right,
but it makes me happy that touched you guys that way because that's all we're trying to do. But
yep,
well, so let me just share with everybody. If you go to fromthefarm.org and you look up E6 Ranch, you'll get to see Curtis's ranch. You won't be able to buy there yet unless you're within his area. He's up towards Kalispell, Montana. But in the next few weeks, we're helping him finish getting set up for his boxes and insulation and all of the shipping stuff so that he can open that
yep,
up
yep.
to a little bit wider audience. Are you going to keep it West Coast? What's your plan?
No, my plan is to go all across the nation,
Okay.
and so we're also looking at talking it over with some of our veterinary clinics and stuff like that, and getting some of their styrofoam insulated boxes. Now,
Yeah.
I know that we're here talking about regenerative agriculture, and we want to stay green, and we
Oh
want to
yeah.
provide. But here's the thing: if I got an opportunity to recycle and reuse that styrofoam box and then send it with my beef in it to a customer that's over in North Carolina or wherever, then I'm going to have a note in there asking them to do the same, reuse it for something else. That's truly recycling things and truly reusing things.
Yep.
Anything that's closer, like if I go to ship to Arizona or let's just say ship to Washington or what have you, I'll be using the cardboard boxes with the
recycled cardboard insulation.
Yeah,
Well,
all of
yeah.
that. And so that's really the direction we want to go, is be able to provide that, and just know that make sure our customers know that when we do ship it, and if it does come in a styrofoam box, that hey, it's styrofoam, but it's got a cardboard box around it, for strength and stability. But that was done out of intention to help, one, keep that recycled material moving, keep it
Yep.
moving, being reused and doing certain things, for themselves. And
Smart.
yeah,
Yeah, there are producers, and we'll figure this out too, where they'll send it and there's a return label in there, and they'll send
yeah,
it back, and they've figured out how to make that pencil out so it's not a waste.
yeah,
And that's perfect. When I was selling beef for my cousin, we were going to a local dog food store, a high-end dog food, and they had coolers that literally would hold a quarter beef on
yeah,
a 100 pounds of beef. So that made it so easy because we were selling quarter halves and wholes. And so I was able to break it up and put a whole quarter in one of these big we recycled it, but it was styrofoam, and it worked perfectly, and it was
yep,
upcycled.
yep,
So
yep, yeah.
awesome.
And then the styrofoam just works and holds better, that dry ice better, and
Yeah.
lasts longer, and so on and so forth, to where when they get the product, it's no different than if they were here and just grabbed it out of the meat locker here.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Well, so if you're looking to buy beef from Curtis and his family, go to fromthefarm.org and look up the E6 cattle. Also, there are producers all over the nation there that you can check out as well.
yep.
If you're looking to buy live cattle, what's the best way for them to reach you on that? Should they go to your
So
Instagram, or what? How would you like them?
Instagram or Facebook, and you message us, and do that, go that route. We're developing a website right now to where we can have actually a page dedicated to seed stock. So if somebody wants to buy heifers from us or whatever, we actually have, I think there's a reel that we do have up on Instagram and on Facebook that has some heifers listed for sale.
Great. And
So
what are your Instagram? What's your Instagram handle and your
so
Facebook?
Facebook is E6 Miniature Herefords, and then the other one is what's the Instagram? E6 Miniature. It's E6 Miniature Hereford as well, but I think it's spelled differently, or on that way.
Yeah, E6
You
Mini
just had to
Hereford.
ask me. Yeah, there
I
you go.
found it.
E6 Mini
Yeah,
Hereford. That's right. Yeah.
yeah.
And so the miniature Hereford is the Facebook page. Either way, you can find us. If you just put it in there, you'll find us. There's not very many of us around, so
Nice.
yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Thanks for spending time with me today, Curtis. And thanks for giving your
bet.
boy a chance to earn some more manhood by feeding the livestock while you're on this.
By himself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, that's
Yep.
awesome. Cool. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Curtis, I really appreciate you. This has been great.
Yep. Thank
We'll
you.
see ya.
Yep.
Thanks for joining, everybody. I appreciate you being on here. The great comments and stuff happening on Instagram and everywhere else. It was awesome to have Curtis here. You'll get to see him more. We'll do some more content and stuff with him. I'm looking forward to getting out to his ranch, and I'm fairly certain this is the route we're going on our homestead, is to get a couple of mini Herefords from him and finish him out ourselves. On our ground, it's the perfect size. So thanks again, everybody. Appreciate you being here.
If COVID showed us anything, it's how fragile our food supply chain really is.
I would hear the news talking about empty store shelves in the city, no meat. But yet I'm driving through the country and I see cattle standing in the field that a customer could buy. My name's AJ Richards, raised in St. George, Utah. My family are 5 generations of ranchers.
I'm Brooke Ants. Today it can be incredibly difficult to be a farmer or rancher, even for people that have been doing it generationally. And it's not because of the work, but it's actually pressures from the big 4.
4 companies control 85% of our food supply chain. And in many cases, it's very clear that they're buying off politicians.
And if North Korea or China's Great Leap Forward have taught us anything, a centralized food supply can accidentally or intentionally kill a lot of people. Luckily, it's not all doom and gloom.
What's missing is a competitive marketplace. So I'm thinking about these unsold cows, and I just had this aha moment. What if somebody built a website similar to Airbnb, but instead of short-term rentals, it highlighted and connected you with local farmers and ranchers so that we could actually go right to the producer?
So FromTheFarm.org is a digital farmers market connecting you, the customer, with local farmers and ranchers who produce meat, vegetables, fruit, and dairy. Plus, you can pick it up locally, and many producers even have shipping options.
The most important value of decentralization is food sovereignty. The ability for you, as a sovereign individual, to have the right to buy your food and source it where you choose. If you know the name of the producer growing it, you have now insulated yourself from not having it, like when the store shelves were empty.
We, the people, can take back control of our food. Invest in your family, invest in From the Farm.
From the Farm helps families access food with more nutrition than what you're going to find at the grocery store.
Studies have shown repeatedly that locally farmed produce is more nutritionally rich than factory farmed food. It just is. You can't beat it.
Because these small family farmers and ranchers are growing it how they were taught by their grandparents and great-grandparents, which is quality over quantity, because they're putting their personal name on that product, not hidden behind some massive corporate logo.
Hormones, performance-enhancing drugs, and chemical treatments, including carbon monoxide, are just some of the things these corporations do to increase profits and improve shelf life, not your life.
Meanwhile, up to 40% of your meat's nutritional value is lost in the process. There's also the environmental impact from all the mileage your food racks up. Apples, 1,556 miles. Lettuce, 2,055 miles. And beef, a staggering 2,874 miles, all resulting in unnecessary pollution across the country. But when you buy from local growers, these numbers turn into these numbers.
Not only is shopping with From the Farm decreasing pollution and reclaiming your food sovereignty, but you are also getting a superior product. Parallel food economies, or buying local, is the future of food.
I was actually the first person to invest in From the Farm. I was 100% all in. I've started businesses, I've had some really cool opportunities in the entertainment industry and the sporting world, but getting healthy food into more Americans' hands is more important than anything I've ever done.
So right now we've assembled our team. We've got some amazing people on board to execute and make this happen. Like Isaac Barlow, who knows how to scale tech companies in the blue-collar space because he's done it before. Now we're in the process of raising the funding from you guys to help us scale this to the next level. We can't do this alone. We need the strength of the American people behind us. Help us build a new food system that combines the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future. Investing in From the Farm isn't just a financial decision, it's an investment in our future, our small family farms, and our food sovereignty. Invest today.